I have to wonder if the actions of Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden and these powerful establishment elites, I have to wonder if it's on purpose, that they're trying to destroy the United States, they're trying to destroy European nations and Canada because they want some kind of great reset or great change. One thing I've stated in the past as it pertains to parallel economies and the Civil War is that, well, it's one way to get rid of the U.S. Constitution. I don't know exactly about what's going on in Canada, but in the U.S., in order to get rid of our Constitution and the values held by a lot of people, you'll need some kind of civil war. You will need a large faction of people breaking away and saying, we no longer hold these values true. And once that happens, you can come in and sweep up. One way to put it is, from the ashes of the old, we shall build anew. And if the United States stays on its path, which is based on founding documents, sure, they can chip away at the block, and they have. I mean, they've taken away a bunch of our gun rights, things like that. They've violated many of our constitutional rights, and they continue to do so. But if they want a great reset in a shorter amount of time, they're going to need some kind of great conflict that purges the old, a kind of great leap forward or a cultural revolution. Justin Trudeau ordering the freezing of assets of truckers and those who funded them may have an unintended consequence of exacerbating the parallel economy, pushing us toward civil war. But that's why I say, I wonder if it's on purpose. Maybe they want this to happen. Honestly, I don't know. But the big story right now, banks were absolutely caught off guard by Justin Trudeau's order to freeze assets, and it's probably causing some very serious problems. We are also getting reports that they're attempting to freeze cryptocurrency wallets, which they can't do. So they're telling businesses to stop accepting traffic coins in and out from certain wallets. We'll see if they can pull it off. Maybe. But I think for the most part, probably not. Now, the tweet I have displayed is from a Twitter user, James Melville. James Melville is a verified user communications and sponsorship consultant, freelance writer, liberal. And he says, what the heck is happening to Canada's banks right now? This is a tweet that's going around. Not just him, but many people are showing these images. Scotiabank outages reported in the last 24 hours. We have just in the past few hours, the previous night, 39 reports, around 30 reports. So we have maybe close to 100 reports of people saying, maybe like 70 or 80 reports, that the banks are down. You can see there's some noise going past previous hours, but that's probably just what it is, noise. This huge spike is interesting. Take a look at this. RBC outages reported in the last 24 hours. Now here we have maybe 5,000 or so, a little bit over 5,000. You can see, actually it looks like about 7. You can see here we have about just over 2,000. And then we have around, actually it looks like it might be around 10,000 because you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it looks like over 10,000 reports of RBC being out. You have BMO outages reported in the last 24 hours, a huge spike. What does this mean? Well, I can't verify that any of these banks are down. Looking at the peak of how many reports, 31, 15 or so, a few thousand for one bank, I think this is legitimate. I don't think these banks are down. I've gone to their websites. They seem to be operational. I don't have accounts with these companies, so I don't know. But I'll tell you what I think it is. I think this is people waking up to realize they can't use their bank account. Why? They've been frozen. So they report it as an outage. Now, it's probably a lot of collateral damage. I'll tell you that. When these banks start freezing things, they're probably getting the wrong people. How do they know for sure? And for a lot of these people in Canada who use these banks, what did they know? They heard people are protesting. They're like, I'll support a protest. Now, all of a sudden, their banks are being frozen? Yes. Here's what you need to realize. The people who funded this stuff, who are funding these truckers, it's not like they're standing on their front porch screaming, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, waving Canadian flags and demanding an end to the Trudeau regime. I'm sure some of them probably are. But what may be happening is that there's some dude slumped over on his desk, clicking away at work, and he's like, filing things and doing data entry. He gets a message from a friend. You see this Canadian freedom thing? They're against the mandates. And he goes, oh, yeah. Oh, that's cool. I'll send $20. And then carries on with his job. His focus is not the protests. He is not a zealot. He is just like, yeah, cool. Go truckers. And doesn't really think much after that. A lot of the people who donated, you have to realize, aren't sitting here staring at the news the same way many of us are. So one day, someone online clicks a button and sends $20. And then a week, 3 weeks later, their bank account is frozen. They don't know why. They're not following the news. They report it as an outage. Several people are probably shocked to find that this is happening. This is insanity for Canada to do this, to be going at. There was so I don't know exactly whose accounts are being frozen, mind you, but there are videos of people going to stores. There's a guy and he's like, I support the truckers, and he swipes his card and it's declined. And he's like, I've got money in this account. They're rejecting it. They won't let me use it. That's how crazy things are going to get, which is going to bring us to a hard parallel economy, precursor to a civil war. I mentioned this years ago when they were engaging in censorship. Man, I know it gets brought up relatively often, but I guess it was a substantial moment. The Joe Rogan Experience podcast, where I was on with Jack Dorsey, Joe, and Vijay Agade. And one of the last things I said to them, if you keep doing this, eventually this country is going to erupt. It's going to be civil war, chaos. I can't remember exactly how I phrased it. But my point was, if you keep engaging in this censorship, you are ripping this country apart, and it will result in physical hot conflict. And it has, and it will continue to get worse. Now, this is Canada, mind you, not the United States. Our cultures are very similar in many ways. We share a lot of culture. We tend to steal a lot of comedians from Canada, so we have a lot of similar values. Although Canada still has very different values from us, I still think it's relevant. What's happening in Canada, in the U.S., in much of Europe, it's all very, very similar, if not slightly different, but all very similar. Lockdowns, vaccine mandates, censorship, this weird cult taking over. It's happening. And when you see this story, we had this from fortune.com. Trudeau's emergency order aimed at freezing the funds of the Freedom Convoy caught banks off guard. The emergency orders tell banks to freeze the accounts of anyone involved in or supplying an illegal protest. And that's why I mentioned some dude, eyes half glazed over, just typing away, doing data entry, because they're now considered to have supplied these protests. But they probably have no idea. Now, we also have Give, Send, Go getting hacked, the donors getting doxxed. It may just be that these people's personal information was released, and there you go. Now check this one out from CoinDesk. We have this story. Canada sanctions 34 crypto wallets tied to trucker freedom convoy. I saw these stories, and I thought to myself, there is going to be some kind of great revolution, conflict. I don't know exactly what, but I feel like the end result may be something most people don't realize. Let me ask you a question. You as an American, you support the Canadian freedom convoys, right? Of course you do. Many Americans have provided donations and funds to the freedom convoys. Although most of the donations did come from Canada, we know this because these people got doxxed. Many Americans support and financially supported this. Trudeau was big mad about it. Now they're trying to freeze these crypto wallets. They can't really freeze them. They're ordering institutions to stop trading with specific wallets. So it's a sanction on these wallets. Here's what I find interesting. If there was to be a civil war in the United States, it certainly would ripple up into Canada, I assure you. Because you can look at what's happening with the freedom truckers. If it really became a hot conflict between the cult, which includes Trudeau and his crackpot worldviews, his despotism, very much in line with the American establishment left, I assure you the fighting would reach Canada, it would reach the US, and it has. I mean, this is an example of it. Proud Boys are banned in Canada because they're viewed as a terrorist organization. So apparently there's not even any real Proud Boys organizations up there, but they did it anyway because they're insane. Because things are being ripped apart, because culture and society are being ripped apart. And I think what you need to understand, I think that there's not necessarily countries in this great cultural conflict and civil war. There's tribes based on internet boundaries. The borders don't mean as much as they used to. It's the internet. So what's the end result? Let me tell you. One end result could be globalism. Let's put it this way. If there is a sundering in our society that reaches up into Canada because they'll stop getting food and supplies if we start fighting, Then you're going to have Trudeau, obviously on the side of the establishment Democrats, but you're going to have freedom truckers and resistance groups on the side of the American right. Supplies will be trading between them. What happens then when either side wins? There will be harsher and greater connection between these countries. It could effectively merge the entirety of North America under one unifying legal precedent. I don't know exactly that. It's like a bold thing to say for sure, because we don't know if it'll get that far or when it will. But I believe parallel economies are the path towards such an endeavor. Cryptocurrencies are going to unite the world under a single financial system. A lot of people on the right, a lot of libertarian types, a lot of conspiracy theorists were opposed to this idea, yet they were the ones who welcomed it in. Some of the first adopters of Bitcoin were these anti-government types. It's just so perfect, isn't it? I'm not saying it's intentional. I don't know. I'm saying an end result could be the merging of our societies and cultures under a single banner of some sort. Here's how it's going to happen. Here's how it could happen. What we're seeing with the sanctioning of people's financial interests will lead to the formation of parallel industry, not just parallel economy. Take a look at this story from the Daily Mail. Allegiant passenger is kicked off flight because he allegedly had "Let's Go Brandon" written in tiny writing on his mask and refused to change it. Now, I don't know why else this guy would be kicked off, but I saw this story and I was reading all of these different stories and I thought to myself, if you can't sit in a plane because your mask has something written on it they don't like, someone who doesn't like Joe Biden is thrown off a plane simply for saying "Let's Go Brandon" on his mask privately to himself. That's the accusation. Now, this woman says to the man, "You have to change your mask." I don't see why he would. It appears he's wearing your typical cloth mask. There is some writing on it. The official story is that the mask said "Let's Go Brandon." She didn't like it, demanded he remove it, and when he said no, she said get off the plane. What's this man to do? Should he not fly? Are we going to have conservative airlines? Is there going to be an airline industry only for conservatives? More importantly, Allegiant Airlines. Is the CEO going to apologize to this man and to Trump supporters and conservatives over something like this happening? I don't know. I honestly don't think so. I know there are already a lot of people who don't want to fly in these airlines because they don't want to have to wear masks. Now you have something like this happen. What happens when people can't use public services because of their political views? Parallel industry and parallel economy. We're there. We really, really are. It's not a joke. It's not a game. It's not speculation. We are there. Take a look at paralleleconomy.com. Oh, look, it's Dan Bongino. The new standard in digital payments. Quote, "The ability to run your business free from the pressures of cancel culture is something I'm willing to fight for. Freedom isn't going to protect itself, and Parallel Economy is committed to fighting for a free, fair, and open internet." Censor-resistant payment processors. They say 1.49% plus 15 cents per transaction for card present. Card not present transactions is 2.98 plus 15%. My understanding is that's actually pretty good. That's not all that bad. I mean, it might be, it seems like it's pretty good. They say it's $20 a month. They're going to match any competitor. The parallel economy. They're literally calling it the parallel economy. It's here. I've been thinking about in the news, stories like Alec Baldwin, for instance. He straight up killed a woman and he didn't get arrested. That's amazing. You have this story about, what's that guy's name? Quintel Brown, is that his name? I could be getting his name wrong. But you have the story of the Black Lives Matter activist arrested for attempting to assassinate a mayoral candidate. He's been bailed out already by Black Lives Matter. And, I'm seeing a bunch of people on the right say, I'm not surprised, this is the way it goes, blah, blah, blah. We have the story about Hillary Clinton and spying in Durham, and the media is already trying to cover it up, saying it's not true. Hillary Clinton didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, maybe they can use semantic arguments. But the fact remains that, long story short, someone, seeking favor with the Clintons on their payroll, or, to a certain degree, was spying on Donald Trump's servers as president of the United States. I mean, that's how the Wall Street Journal's reported it, and that's basically what it says in the filings. But the New York Times said the opposite. Hillary Clinton wasn't involved, and it wasn't spying on President Trump. It was spying on Obama. Okay. When I see this, and I'm like, who do you believe? The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. Wow. The parallel economy is here, man. I've said it before on Timcast IRL. I don't care what these people think anymore. I really, really don't. I mean, I know I'm sitting here on YouTube, but Rumble exists. Rumble's growing. Parallel economy is growing. So now you're going to have your Rumble account. Rumble invested in Parallel Economy. You're going to set up your Locals account to do subscriptions. Your money is going to be funneled through paralleleconomy.com to your Locals account while you post your videos on Rumble. It's growing. Dan Bongino was banned from YouTube, but he had more followers on Rumble anyway. That's where we're going. It doesn't matter anymore. Cancel culture, as I stated to Jack Dorsey, rip this country in half. Now, the one thing I will say to many conservatives, not all of them, just many of them, many people on the right, stop trying to hang out with these people on the left in the establishment in their clubs. Look, Joe Rogan does. I feel like it's kind of a moot point. Like, what's the purpose of hanging out with these people who are just out of their minds? They're lying. They say Fox News is lying about Hillary Clinton and all that stuff, but then they come out with their own lies. I certainly think there's some nuance missing from Fox News' reporting about the Durham filing. But I tell you this, there's a reason independents, moderate voters, are on the side of the conservatives right now. Because that's reality. The left lives in some crackpot delusional world where they're banging on the door of the Supreme Court screaming about Brett Kavanaugh, and they don't even know why. They're marching through the street saying, ban guns, and they don't know why. They don't even know anything about guns. When I went down to the March for Our Lives a few years ago, some of the people did. Most of them didn't. They couldn't tell you this from that, up or down. And you know what? Honestly, neither could I. Until I went in and actually started doing research, started buying guns. And so at a certain point, when we're one nation, we try to argue. We try to say, good sir or madam, please let me welcome you to reality. Let me show you the facts and explain to you why this isn't true. Donald Trump did not collude with Russia. The evidence is here. You can see it. And they say no. They still believe it. You go to them and say, we have liberal journalists like Matt Taibbi reporting that there was an investigation, Viktor Shokin in Ukraine investigating Burisma, and that Joe Biden, in all likelihood, got the prosecutor fired for doing this. And they say, you're a liar. Donald Trump was trying to quid pro quo. Gordon Sondland comes out and says, there was no quid pro quo. Donald Trump said to me, no, I don't want anything, no quid pro quo. But in my opinion, I feel like there was. The left says, well, if he feels that way, it must be true. Fox News says, Gordon Sondland said, Donald Trump, quote, no quid pro quo, I don't want anything. It's the craziest thing in the world. Why would Donald Trump go and say, no, I don't want anything, no quid pro quo? Why would he say that? And Gordon Sondland, testifying basically against Trump, admitted Trump quoted to him, I don't want anything for this. Yet you would operate off of his speculative reasoning instead. I'm sorry, you don't live in reality. We don't use someone's personal opinions against statements of fact. Donald Trump said X, but I kind of felt like he meant something else. We can't operate off of what you assume. We can operate off of what Trump told you to do when he told you not to do it. So here's the issue. At a certain point, I try to argue. We try to reason. There's no point in doing that now. These people voted for Joe Biden. The country is aflame, and most of them are still just like, Joe Biden was the right choice. Trump's a fascist. Oh no, Trump's a fascist. He's going to get it. I don't care. I literally don't care at this point. This country's split in two, completely split. And so the only thing we can do is build infrastructure. You want to make sure you can survive in a world where you're a second-class citizen to the left? Don't go to their country. This is what I said before. When the mainstream press says something about me, I'm like, why do I care what France thinks about me? I don't live in France. The country has been split to such a degree that when the New York Times comes out and issues a fart story about fart nonsense, I'm just like, I literally don't care. I don't live in their crackpot deranged world. I live in the real world where we fact check things, where our views of things are based on real videos and evidence. Of course, not everybody who supports Trump believes in reality. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a faction of people that do. At a certain point, I said, there's no point in trying to pull someone out of the matrix when they're adamant and determined to live in that matrix. But what happens when the matrix engulfs critical infrastructure you need to run your business and live? You need to get away from that and build your own infrastructure. Instead of going and being like, Please, Twitter, let me use your platform. I'm just like, yeah, I don't even care anymore. I don't even care. Okay? I don't. If we get banned from YouTube, I'll go on Rumble. We built our own website. We are working through a nonprofit we formed to build technology that will be decentralized and plug into all of these different networks and create an independent and parallel economy so that you need not worry about what the insane cult thinks of you. Let them have the infrastructure. Instead of trying to be a second-class citizen in their world, do the work for yourself and assume the responsibility. If they own Twitter, good for them. We'll go on Gab, Getter, or whatever. Man, a lot of people don't like Getter. We'll go on minds.com, minds.com. We'll post there. You don't like that these payment processors are freezing out your accounts, these banks? Paralleleconomy.com. They're building their own. Now, the end result in this, I think, will be civil war, because when both sides are able to arm and provide resources and engage in trade, which facilitates the production of resources, you will get hot conflict, especially when there's nothing left to lose. The biggest mistake made by Twitter, by Patreon. When you ban these people, they have nothing left to lose, so they won't play your game anymore. There are people on Twitter. There's people like me on YouTube. There's certain things, we'll only post at timcast.com, and we'll have those member segments there. Go to timcast.com, be a member if you want to help support our work. Because we're like, okay, we'll be on YouTube. We don't want to cede this ground, but there's some conversations I won't bother bringing here. YouTube is losing that. If YouTube were to ban me, we're off the leash. We're going to go do our thing. We're going to talk about what we want to talk about, and we don't care what you think anymore. So they'll drift further and further into their spiral of insanity. We'll remain in the real world, talking about reality, talking about what's actually happening, financing each other, not using their banking institutions, using cryptocurrencies and others to get around their psychotic attempts at censoring and shutting people down. And then eventually, we'll be more robust, better protected, and they'll have nothing because they're a cult, and they're not going to be able to make it. Look, get woke, go broke. It's not a law, but it is a tendency. And if they keep sacrificing merit for diversity, their companies will crumble. Maybe there won't be a civil war because that'll happen first. So we'll see. But so long as they keep doing this stuff with these banks, we'll see more of this. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.